everyone. I'm Paul Kagabine, the Adult Programs Coordinator over at the Garland County Library. And today we have special guest, returnee Sarah Richardson, who's the Executive Director over at the Literacy Council of Garland County. And today's program is going to be how to help an adult access literacy services. We have many adults in Garland County and the surrounding areas who struggle with reading, and Sarah's going to talk to us today about how we can use the services that the Literacy Council provides to help improve the skills. So, Sarah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we begin, I want to give you a public congratulations because you were recently elected the Rising Star from the Chamber of Commerce. So congratulations.
Okay, well, thank you. Unexpected, thank you.
Well, I think that you were a poor choice for that because you're not a rising star. You already are a star.
You're too kind. I am always singing the praises of the library. I don't know how you guys don't win every award. And I really want to applaud the efforts you make to make libraries inclusive spaces for people who maybe books aren't the right thing, because libraries are an important part of our culture. And if you can't read or they're just not your thing, you feel left out. And so you guys do a great job making sure that this is a community hub for everybody.
Appreciate that. And of course, we have other services that go beyond just books. We have free computer access for the public and all kinds of programs and movies and audiobooks and all kinds of other opportunities and services.
Yeah.
But you've got a great presentation for us today. So I'm going to turn things over to you and I might pop back up at the end for some questions.
Okay. So I've given a lot of presentations around town and here at the library about what the Literacy Council does. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page about that, the Literacy Council has served Garland County since 1983, initially just teaching adults to read. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And Sarah, let me know when you want me to move forward with your slides.
Yes. Okay. But over the years, we've added a lot of other skills, including basic math, English as a second language, computer skills, financial literacy, and recently quite a bit of health literacy incorporated in our program. So we think of ourselves as all things adult ed that you probably missed in high school, or maybe you didn't get to go to school. So that's the group that we hope to serve. So when I give these presentations and share about what we do, I get a lot of questions about how do I notice if somebody can't read, and then what do I do if I do notice it? So that's what this presentation is about. And you can, we'll get into it and I'll share with you a little bit about what's next. So if you want to hit the next slide. So just a quick but the basic facts in Garland County, 20% of adults in Garland County are below what's called a level 1, which means they're at risk for understanding or reading materials, which works out to about a 3rd or 4th grade reading level. We don't get a whole lot of just non-readers. We don't get a lot of people who come in the door with no reading whatsoever. That does happen, but that's pretty rare. What we get is people who come in and say, you know, I can read enough to get through this part of my job, but not to take the test to level up in a promotion. Or I can read the books my kids brought home from school last year, but it's getting to the point I cannot read them. And so when you're thinking about people who maybe you might think of as can't read, they actually probably can read some things. So keep that in mind. But an additional 36% of Garland County is below a level 2, which is roughly the average reader. So when you get into complex inferences or evaluation of what they're reading, that might be really difficult. And so you're looking at about half the county doesn't read at the level that would allow them to be a fully proficient reader. And for some people that works out, but a lot of people have goals they want to achieve and they need that next level. So that's where we come in. So we and I'm going to share a little bit about the impact of that with you on the next slide, that the effects totally are profound. So these are largely national numbers. I have done the backwards math. It's not clean math, so I'm going to share the math with you. But if you brought every low literate adult in the country, not just here, in the country, up to a 6th grade reading level, it would add $2.2 trillion to the U.S. economy. And I wanted to write that out with all the zeros, so it's there for you to kind of take in the expanse of how big that number is. Also, I taught in K-12 public education for 14 years. I'm passionate about children, and the number one predictor of a child's reading success is the reading level of their mother. So when we help adults learn to read, we're impacting generations that we haven't even met yet. So the cost of poor literacy adds $106 to $238 billion in healthcare costs, from misuse of emergency room to poorly read medical directions. All of that adds up. And when you're dealing with folks in an incarcerated situation, if they participate in an education program, whether it's basic reading or a GED program, they're 3 times less likely to recidivate. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of the impact that helping adults learn and improve would have on our economy and our daily lives in our community. So if any of you have heard me share about the Literacy Council and the literacy situation in Garland County, you've probably heard these facts. I just wanted to be sure we started from the same point before we get into what to do now that you know these facts. So if the next slide, we're going to start in with some of the signs on what to look for to notice an adult who may be struggling to read. So the first one is showing no interest in reading. And Paul and I just addressed this. Some people aren't interested in reading. So none of these signs is a tell-all. It's not one of those, oh, this one sign means you definitely have reading struggles. This is more a series of clues to lead you to what to do next. So if you have a person particularly that shows no interest in reading things that they would otherwise be interested in. So let's say they're really interested in cars and you found this great article about a car they're interested in, you brought it to them and they say, oh, I don't want to read that. Or assigned reading is avoided. They also might make excuses like, I forgot my glasses, or I don't really have time to read this right now. Can I bring it back to you? And I want to convey how adept these adults are at functioning without reading. Just in the last month, I heard of a small town mayor here in Arkansas who showed up at a local literacy council and said, I got to have some help. My wife died last week. And the director said, well, of course, we've been concerned. We saw. And he said, no, you don't understand. She was reading everything to me. And so he said, I can read some of it, but I can't read all the documents anymore that she's gone. So there are a level of coping skills that it can be a little hard to navigate through when you're trying to identify an adult who can't read, and they can be quite proficient at what they are doing. So the next sign we're going to talk about is that if they do read something, there's issues understanding what they read. So going back to that first statistic that you're talking about, having difficulty comprehending, the person may read most of the words on the page, but I think if you took a book and blacked out 20% of the words, you would get confused, especially when you're blacking out the more difficult words. So the adult may read what they were given, but come back to the table with confusing answers, or they don't even ask any questions, but still don't seem to follow through on what was in the written material, just to avoid showing that they don't understand it, to try to cover up. So another example is they've read it and they come back to the table, but the question they ask you or the thing they say just doesn't quite connect. It's almost like they pulled key words and tried to put together a sentence. And that can be a sign that they didn't understand what they read. So our next signal sign is that it takes a long time to solve a basic task. So this basic task, especially if they're given something where you've taught it and then you need them to explain it back out loud, or read the directions back out loud to the group, or take a chunk of the task, and they're really having a hard time with something that on the surface seems very straightforward, it can be a sign that they're having a difficulty reading what you've given them. So our next sign that we're having a little difficulty reading ties into these first two, and it's difficulty following basic directions. So for me, if I'm learning something new, or a common task in my job is grant writing or pulling data, I might make myself a written list of the steps, or somebody may give me a short document that tells me how to get through the steps. And for somebody who struggles with reading, they may miss parts of those directions or attempt to read them, but execute them poorly. And a lot of times adults who've made it, especially to middle age with poor reading, have excellent memories. But if some step gets in the memory wrong, then you're having to overcompensate with that list that you can't read well. So that can be a sign that they're struggling to read. Our next sign is poor penmanship. This one is definitely one that you have to tie in with some others, because a lot of people have poor penmanship. About 1 in 10 adults struggle with dyslexia, which is a brain-based reading disorder. But it has a related disorder called dysgraphia that causes difficulty with writing. So that may be an issue. It might be an issue that the adult is having to work so hard to translate their thoughts into sounds and letters, it becomes really difficult to focus on the mechanics of writing. And the writing is what gets the least amount of brain power. And so it's very difficult to read what they write, or their spelling is extremely poor. And so it's difficult to read as well. So our next sign is one that's really important in this digital era, and that's difficulty with serif fonts. Serif fonts are those, they have little extra pieces on them. They're decorative. Times New Roman is probably, the most common one. But those extra decorative bits don't help, because you'd think maybe they would, but they don't, because for a person with dyslexia, it's not just about flipping the letters. The brain processes letters differently and words than we do. And so changing up the shape of the letter is confusing. There is a font called Open Dyslexic. It works for some folks with dyslexia. It doesn't work for everybody. It's free, but it's out there, and I've heard some people really have a lot of success with it, and some don't. But it's an option, especially if you have an adult in your workplace or your Sunday school class that struggles with dyslexia. So the next one that I really want to hit on hard is this intelligence piece. Intelligence and reading ability are not a straight line correlation. Many low-level readers are quite intelligent. They're very creative. There are so many examples of adults who were highly successful in their field, highly successful in what they put their minds to, but struggled with reading. One example is often referred to was Einstein. He struggled as a child to learn and then caught up. But there are plenty of people, you could just Google even adults with dyslexia or adults who learn to read late in life, and the list is long. And so don't let just the intelligence to be a indicator for you of a person's reading level or lack thereof. because it's just not that straight line of a correlation. So our next point to think about is if there's a pretty severe discrepancy between their ability and confidence. I think we all struggle with some self-esteem or some maybe we're afraid to speak in front of groups, or we get intimidated by taking on large projects. But if you're working with somebody who's highly competent, but really doubt their ability or have shame about their difficulties, maybe they've even said to you, the reading part is a little tough for me, that unfortunately we have such a huge stigma in our society about reading and the lack of ability to read. I would argue that's strange, because if you try to learn anything else, everybody applauds you. If you want to go learn to fix a transmission, or if you want to learn to knit, or if you decide you want to improve your math skills, those are applauded. But there's somehow embarrassment attached to, reading is not something I am great at. I would love to improve it. That should not be embarrassing, just like it shouldn't be embarrassing to admit you want to learn ceramics. If you want to learn something, it should be at your fingertips. So our next point is how to help. So because of that stigma and that fear around approaching the person and stepping on their toes or embarrassing them, these are some strategies. I've talked with other literacy councils around the state. These are some of the ways we all find that are tend to work in everybody's favor. So my first piece of advice would be to share that the Literacy Council exists with a whole group. So if you're in a staff meeting, or you're talking to your Sunday school group, or you're going to a book club or anything, just say, hey, I heard this presentation by the person who works at the Literacy Council, and this is what they do if you want to learn computer skills or improve your reading. They do it for free. And so you've kind of opened the door in a really safe environment and not called anyone out. In the case of some workplaces, we in the past have offered workplace literacy on site, and sometimes that helps as well. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're a manager or business owner. The next thing I would say, and it's where we really start from, is to ask about their goals. So if you're just meeting one-on-one with this person, and the example of the person I met was a realtor who sometimes has, especially people whose English speaking ability isn't really strong, you can ask, hey, when you moved here, what's some of the things you want to do while you're here? And then that can lead to them saying, I would really like to get involved with foster care, but I have trouble with all the manuals. You can say, well, here's the number to the Literacy Council. They'll help you get the English skills you need for that specific task. And you can do some of that backwards planning as well. So I know a young lady who wants to go back to college and maybe work with children, and she doesn't have her GED. And so we worked backwards from that. I said, oh, well, here's the number to get your GED. And if you get in there and you're struggling, the Literacy Council can help you get ready to go start your GED. So kind of that backwards work from the goal of what they want to do with their life or with their children can be helpful as an avenue to say, well, here's the support for that. I'd really advise you to avoid the words basic reading or learn to read, partially because that is a little condescending, but also a lot of adults do read to some level and have functioned with that level of reading long enough that it can be hard for them to recognize what they're missing out on. So I would advise to use the language, they can help you improve your reading over at the Literacy Council, or they can help you improve your written English at the Literacy Council. And then we can work out the assessments and matching them to the right level of what they need to work on at the right speed they need to work on it. And again, we're very goal-based. So the Literacy Council can help you get to that goal or reach that goal. Especially if it's a basic skill type goal. And then if they get to us and they're too high level for us, we'll refer them to adult ed or help them get matched up with some of the workforce programs that can help them get the training they want to work towards that goal. We also have a lot of luck starting with a single task. Oh, sorry. So if you see somebody who's struggling with their housing form, saying they can help you with your housing form at the Literacy Council, then can let us lead into what other things would you like to be able to do that we can help you with. And then demonstrate your lifelong learning. Say, I took this great class through the United Way on financial planning, or at the library on how to keep bees. So when you share that you went somewhere and got free help to learn something, it shows that we value that, it's important, and it's for everybody. So I have a slide here at the end for questions. I didn't see any pop up in the feed, but I wondered if you saw any, Paul.
Not yet, but if anybody that watches this later has questions, please leave those in the comments, and I'm sure Sarah will check that out and be able to give you a great response, or they can contact you or the Literacy Council.
Yeah, our number is 501-624-7323, which used to be, you still could do it, I guess. 7323 is READ, so 624-READ. And then we have a webpage, literacycouncilgarlandcounty.org. We do have a volunteer orientation coming up, which is a great way to just come learn some things, even if you just want to volunteer for fundraisers or help with outreach, or if you want to tutor. We do have that coming up, and you can follow us on Facebook and keep up with all our events and fundraisers. And if we're having, for example, we're starting a class for adults pursuing citizenship and to study for that citizenship test. And all those events will be linked in there so you can offer them to other adults who need those services.
That's awesome. Well, that was a very thorough slideshow. I can't believe it was so quick because it felt like it was so in depth. But yeah, I really appreciate you going through all of the stereotypes that people might have of somebody that can't read, and addressing how it doesn't have any indication of their intelligence or their skills or talents in other areas. I think that's really important because there's a lot of stigma.
Right. And then, when you tack on the digital literacy skills that, are a barrier to getting a job. If you have somebody coming in wanting a job and they can't fill out your online forms or upload things, we've corrected that in 4 or 5 lessons with an adult. And then they were highly successful at their job because they had all the rest. They just were missing this one component that just happens because life happens. Maybe, you missed the training era of technology. Maybe you had a lot of illnesses as a child and missed learning basic reading, so you just kind of muddled through. So there are a lot of reasons that people end up in that situation, and lots of stigma around it that should just stop, because we wouldn't stigmatize somebody for being sick, which they couldn't control, or stigmatize somebody for family life crisis. So it just should be part of life that if you need help with reading or a basic skill, we go back and get it.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm glad that you guys include technology in that. It's actually really helpful to us at the library because we have people coming in to use our internet area all the time. And, we have great tech people in IT that help when they can, but there's just so many people coming in for various services. And it's great to have an organization like you in the community to be able to refer people who need maybe more in-depth one-on-one time for your tutoring. What is your current tutoring schedule?
So generally speaking, we match tutors and students based on their schedule. We have a Tech Tuesday going. It just we got it going for this semester. At 11:30 is computer basics, and then I can't remember the other 2. I should have brought the list with me. But you can call the office and we can get you signed up. We do have some ESL classes happening at 5 p.m. on Tuesdays. There's one. And then if you're living up in like Jessieville, Fountain Lake, we're starting some classes next month, including computer basics up in that neck of the woods in March.
Excellent, excellent. So, do you have any other programs or events coming up that you want to spotlight?
Yeah, we have a fundraiser coming up that I think is going to be great for our library lovers and our book lovers. It's called Read Between the Wines. And we are going to have Biddy Martin, the author of Snake Eyes. She's going to speak about her book. We're going to have a student there to share her success. There's going to be great food and silent auction and a wine pool where you're guaranteed to win a bottle of wine. It just may be $2 chuck. It may be something much nicer. And we're hoping to just celebrate being a literate community. It's one of my beliefs that part of what our battle is showing that we're a community that values literacy. And so, for example, if you go to Northwest Arkansas, you can see they value the arts. And so for us, becoming a community that you can see we value literacy, because the library has great programs and we're available in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and the schools and all the things we do, it's visible that we value literacy. And so come be part of that. It's a ticketed event. There's a link on our webpage to purchase your ticket. We're going to have a lot of fun and enjoy some book stuff too.
Yeah, and if you've never had a chance to hear Biddy Martin, she's fantastic. I've had a couple programs with her about her book release, Snake Eyes, Murder in Southern Town, and she's just a very...
And she tells me she's trying to capture some special guests to bring with her from the book. So I don't know who that... She hasn't guaranteed me anybody yet, but even if you've heard her speak before, she's bringing in some extra little tidbits to share with people. So
excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Is there anything else? I mean, I know you went over lots of ways that people can help contribute to the Literacy Council, but if there's something that everyone can do, what are your biggest needs right now?
Right now, so we are moving into spring slowly, it feels like. And this is going to be sort of a strange request, but our facility's in an old home, and we're looking for people to sign up to do our lawn, like once in the whole year, just come out and mow the lawn and weed eat one time. I've got a little calendar. If you know a teenager or if your group would like to come take care of the lawn once this year, or if you want to get involved with just basic operating tasks, we have a lot of those kind of things that need to be done, filing, fundraising, outreach. We have quite a few tutors right now actually waiting for students. But if you want to sign up to come be a tutor, come, I'll get you trained, I'll get you started. You just may be waiting a little longer because that's just kind of the flow of things. We end up with too many students or too many tutors, and we're always leveling out. So
sounds good. Well, Sarah, it's a pleasure as always. And we are I'm going to drop a little sneak peek in here, a hint. Last year, we worked together, the Library and Literacy Council, on the Hot Springs Book Festival. And I'll just say we're planning something for the near future again. So stay tuned for announcements, hopefully sometime in the next few weeks. Yes, we're actually having a meeting later this week about this year's book festival. So it's happening. I know people.
The book festival Facebook page is still up, so you can follow it and you'd get the news really quick, I think.
Absolutely. All right, Sarah. Well, anything else? Any last remarks before I let you go?
That's it.
All right. And if anybody has any questions, you can drop those in the comments or reach out to the Literacy Council. What's that number one more time?
501-624-7323, or our webpage is literacycouncilgarlandcounty.org.
All right. Well, everybody, take care.
Thanks.